Welcome to this session. Guys, ready? We have exciting topics today: game studies and animal studies. My throat. Game studies and animal studies. Are you ready? We start with game studies. As you know, gaming is something very important today. But game studies is not only about video games. Game studies is more than that. It is about any game, and also we look at language as a game, culture as a game. You can talk about game studies in the context of many aspects of everyday culture. That is why it is so important. Today, gamification can be added to many aspects of education, culture, communication. Have you been aware of that? So, what are the different aspects of game studies? I will first try to explain. And then, as usual, we will look at the major theorists. We will introduce some important books and we'll do some questions and answers. Ready, guys? What is game studies? Game studies is also known as ludology. Ludo means game. Ludus means game and logia means study. Ludology is the study of games, the act of playing games, the study of the players and the cultures surrounding them. Game studies is a very important aspect of cultural studies. Okay, it's a field of cultural studies that utilizes the tactics of folkloristics. Folkloristics is a very important aspect in research and also in Central University syllabi. So, folklore studies, folkloristics, cultural heritage, sociology, psychology, all important aspects that can be combined with game studies. What do you do in game studies? You examine aspects of the design of the game. How is a game designed? It is not only about video games. It can be about outdoor games. It can be about language as a game. You know, when I went to Canada for research, my supervisor in Canada was an expert on game studies. That was in 2003. Game studies was a very important area even in 2003 in Canada. It is becoming a very important area today. Here, in the context of small children, yes, but you can talk about gamification of any learning, even advanced learning. Gamification can be combined with adult learning also. Adult learning and gamification also important. Will you remember, guys? So, game studies means a combination of cultural studies, folkloristics, cultural heritage, study of sociology, psychology, all this is used to study the design of games, the study of players in the game, the study of the role of the game plays in a society. In a society, what is the role of a game? Are you following me? Now, game studies is often confused with the study of video games, but they are not the same. Game studies and study of video games are not the same. If you want to approach foreign universities for PhD, I have already made videos on it. You can Google search and watch those videos also. I have brought my student from UK to talk to you in a video. You have to be good at all these new areas. If you keep on studying old areas, foreign universities won't take you. You have to be good at new areas. You have to shortlist foreign universities. You have to understand what are the priorities there, what are the criteria for admission, and then prepare an impeccable, awesome synopsis. This video series, 5-day series, will immensely help you for that. That is why I am doing this. But many people don't understand the importance of this video, I think. Many people are not joining us, but it's okay. These are the future. These aspects of cultural studies are the future. That is why we are talking about it. Game studies should not be confused with video games. That is only one area within game studies. Game studies encompasses all types of gaming, including sports, board games, or outdoor games, language games, etc. Game studies was originally rooted in anthropology, but it has diversified methodologically to include approaches from sociology, psychology, and other fields. Social science approaches are there, humanities-based approaches. In game studies, when we, English literature students, enter into game studies, we will take a social sciences approach. What do we study then? How games function in society. I have a friend here in Trivandrum who has done research on cricket and culture. Like that, games, sports can all be studied from the purview of cultural studies. How they function in our society, how interactions with human psychology, psychological theories can be connected to game studies. And sometimes you can also do surveys, controlled lab experiments. Even if you don't do research in these areas, hearing about them, writing some papers about them will make you very trendy. Your CV should be very up to date and contemporary. You should not be talking about old approaches. You should be on par with the contemporary scholars, right? In humanities-based approach to game studies, we talk about how games generate meanings, how they reflect or subvert wider social and cultural discourses, how games generate identities, meanings. Sometimes as part of gender we play games, and how they reflect socio-cultural discourses. This video is not to immediately make you start research. This video is to introduce you to a lot of areas and ideas in an easy manner so that you can start wondering, reading, researching. That is how you will develop an amazing career. So, how games reflect discourses or subvert discourses. Game studies can be combined with studies of carnivalesque, game and carnivalesque, game and third space. All this can be studied. Are you following me? Game and third space. Game and carnivalesque. So, in game studies, more qualitative methods such as close reading, textual analysis, audience theory, methods shared with other media disciplines like television, film studies, etc., can be employed. In the next slides, we will do more like this. Don't worry. I know many of you are confused how exactly to do it. Suddenly you can't. You have to look at books. You have to look at how people have done it. You have to look at various research papers in Google Scholar. Slowly you will understand more and more. Did you understand? It doesn't come suddenly one day. Now, game design is another important area. This is becoming very relevant in education also. You know, if you know game design and such things, you will easily get jobs in the future in colleges and schools. So, game design approaches are closely related. This is my area of research also. My classes, my activities. For 20 years I have been doing this as part of NET coaching program. So many games and activities I have been trying out. You must have seen some of these. We have had game fests. I have brought out Bard's Times and things like that. Have you seen it? We will do more like that. So, this is my area of research also. Game design approaches are closely related to creative practice, creativity, analyzing game mechanics and aesthetics, and these also inform the development of new games. Remember, I have gone to Oxford for some paper presentations. I have told you about it before. There, I talked about gamification and advanced learning of English literature. In YouTube also, I have played games with you, remember? And when I use some gestures, when I trick you, all these are elements of game. You know, you can bring in elements of game into any level of education. I'm doing it consciously as part of my research. So, these are other interesting areas related to gamification and game studies. Ludology versus narratology. You know that from the early 20th century, narratology is important. Structural narratology, Vladimir Prop, etc. Like we do narratological studies, you can study games also. Listen everybody, narratologists, what do they do? Narratologists argue that games are expressive due to their underlying structures. In narratives, there are underlying structures. Ranjana, if you just कीवर्ड सर्च करोगे ना तब गूगल स्कॉलर डाल दो, नहीं तो आर्टिकल्स डाल दो, then you will get Google Scholar automatically. Most of the research articles require subscription, but that is why you need to be part of a university or college, then you will be able to access them. There are many without subscription also. Sometimes it is good to take subscription also, depending on the site. Okay, narratology understands that narratives have underlying structures. Like that, games also have underlying structures. Games can be interpreted like literary texts. That is the meaning of ludology. Games can be interpreted as literary texts. Ludology, so that is what narratologists think. Okay, narratologists think that games can be looked at through their underlying structures like literary texts. But ludology is different. Ludologists think that games, rules and mechanics are important rather than underlying structures. Ludologists give importance to game rules and mechanics. That means how games are done, how games are carried out. You can compare literary methods with game methods. Literary methods are comparable with game methods. You start with some research paper based on all this, okay? It will make you a scholar, and then you can start thinking about research also. Now guys, design is a very, very important aspect of most aspects of culture. Most aspects of culture deal with design. Design can be an important concept that you take up for research also. Game design, what do you mean by that? It is the art of applying design, aesthetics, etc. Principles of design and aesthetics can be applied in creating games, can be applied in creating entertainment forms for education, recreation, exercise, experiment, So how you apply principles of design and aesthetics in creating texts, in creating games, in creating entertainment forms, okay? Do you understand? Am I boring you? This is very important and exciting. NTA NET is not the end of your life. Don't think that your career ends with NTA NET. That is the ultimate. It is nothing. NTA NET is nothing. There is such a wide world in front of us. There are so many things to do. Did you understand? I want you to mold your career in amazing ways. So don't be very traditional. Don't be like boring, people. You should be exciting. You should be exploring more. You should be adding more and more new ideas to your knowledge and your papers, etc., to your CV. So these are all very amazing areas. Okay, now another area is gamification of learning. Gamification of learning is very directly applicable to our career. Okay, this is what I am doing research on. I told you, Abhi, not my PhD research, that was on movies. Now, my personal research these days, which I am presenting papers on in Oxford, etc., are on gamification of learning. What do you mean by that? It is an educational approach that seeks to break free from traditional approaches. My encyclopedia is an example of gamification. There are so many books in Bodhi books that where we have applied gamification. You must have heard of the very popular crossword book. There's a very popular crossword book on non-British literatures. Direct gamification it is. And it helps us to learn easily and retain easily. Cognition becomes much better because of gamification. An educational approach, that is the future. The future generations will not study through lectures in the traditional manner. So when you are teachers, you will need to use all this. How to motivate students through games and activities, through video games. And also, what do you mean by that? Through games means they become completely involved. Audience participation is 100%. Games are highly interactive and so much involving audience participation. So, education, when it is gamified, you can maximize interaction, you can maximize enjoyment, and capture the interest of learners, inspiring them to create their own games, to take part in them, to produce learning, rather than be passive consumers. Students become active producers in learning. Did you notice many of our books in Bodhi, etc., and Q Shop are made through collaborative writing? Many students have taken part in the production of these books and they have learned so much from it. Now again, I am looking out for research scholars and people who are interested in joining us to do encyclopedia work, because new encyclopedia we should make now. All of you are waiting. So I am waiting for, I'm looking for new appointments. So many 30 people are working with us on all this, on gamification of learning. Then audience and interactivity theory is there. Audience and interactivity theory is very much related to games. I already have a PhD from University of British Columbia in Canada, and I told you my research supervisor was an expert in games. That is how I got interested in the area. So audience and interactivity theory matlab kya hai? Games offer audience interactivity with other media, which other media texts cannot provide. Actually, I started research in Kerala University, but then we got a scholarship to go to University of British Columbia. That is how I did my work there. So games offer maximum audience interactivity. Did you understand? Other media texts cannot provide it. Television or movie cannot bring audience participation as much as games do. So, game interactivity is very important in game studies. How the player experiences the story of the game, the mechanics of the game, the environment of the game, how it connects with his culture. And today, this has a lot of business scope also. You will get jobs in this sector because the most important futuristic industry related to education is experience industry. The most important the important futuristic educational practice is experience industry. Did you understand? So you can how experience can be generated through games. Interactivity helps us to experience the game and get more out of the learning process. Then games are now looked at through the angle of feminism, queer studies, etc. Yes, guys, I will, I will announce. Don't worry, don't worry. Games are now looked at through feminism, queer studies, etc. A critical pedagogy is necessary in game studies. You have to critique game studies to prevent the development of toxic game cultures. Many game cultures become toxic. So against that, we use feminist lens, queer studies lens, etc. to avoid the development of toxic gamer culture. Game studies, when you look at it through feminism, queer studies, etc., challenge, interrogate, and problematize existing modes and bring up new approaches to games. Did you get a general idea, guys? Now take a look at the major theorists. If you are interested, you can read some of them. Jesper Juhl, Gary Crawford, Janet Murray, Jane McGonigal, Michaelis Kokonis, Franz Meira. What names, Hannah? Then recommended readings also I have put. An introduction to game studies, the Routledge Companion to Video Game Studies, game research methods and overview. Games, game design, game studies, queer game studies, so many areas that are already, books are available. If you want to study, it is easy. Now guys, are you ready for some questions? There is no point in just listening. You have to answer. So tell me, which of the following is a possible area of research in game studies? Bolo. Influence of anime on Japanese youth culture. Influence of anime on Japanese youth culture. The gastronomic culture of a globalizing society. Representation of trauma in Holocaust narratives. Post-colonial identity in Chimamanda Adichie's short stories. Which of these is a possible area of research? Bolo! Which of these is a possible area of research in game studies? Ta-da-dang! Ding-ding-ding! Exactly! Influence of anime on Japanese youth culture. Anime is the Japanese graphic cartoon kind of thing. Have you watched anime? Yes. Gastronomic means relating to food. Gastronomic is relating to food. What is the term used for an educational approach that seeks to motivate students by using video game design and game elements in learning environments? Bolo? Is it gamification, codification, onomastics, zoosemiotics? Ta-da-dang! Gamification is the term for motivating students through using video game design and game elements. अभी ये बोलो, cultivation theory, wow, is a sociological and communications framework to examine the lasting effects of media, primarily television. Cultivation theory, have you heard of that, guys? Cultivation theory matlab sociological and communications framework to examine the lasting effects of media, primarily television. What is the effect of media on people? It suggests that people who are regularly exposed to media for long periods of time are more likely to perceive the world's realities as they are presented by the media. Their social reality becomes related to media. It affects their attitudes and behaviors. This is called cultivation theory. Who is the proponent of cultivation theory? Guess karo, it is George Gerbner. Correct hai? Hey. Which of the following is not a possible area in game studies? Bolo. Not a possible area in game studies. Analyzing temporal structures in Pac-Man and Animal Crossing. Impact of Player Unknown's Battleground or PUBG on mental health. Analyzing audience reactions to the Game of Thrones finale. Representation of female identity in Australian Indigenous fiction. Bolo. Which of these is not a possible research area in game studies? Bolo, bolo. Bolo, bolo. It is representation of female identity in Australian Indigenous fiction. When I dance like this, it is gamification of YouTube video. Gamification of YouTube video. How do you like that? Do you like that? Did you like the video? Who of the following wrote Simulation versus Narrative? Simulation versus Narrative, Introduction to Ludology. Wow! In which the author expands on concepts of narratology and ludology as modes of framing game analysis. Guess karo, it is Gonzalo Frasca. Gonzalo Frasca. Ta-da-da! Animal studies. Are you interested in animal studies? So many people are already doing research in animal studies. I know a few people. What is animal studies, guys? It is an emerging discipline. An emerging discipline in the realm of humanities. What are they doing, animal studies people? They are studying animals in a variety of cross-disciplinary ways. Okay? Animals are studied in a variety of cross-disciplinary ways. Animal studies provides insights into ideologies and frameworks, according to which some forms of life are enabled to thrive while others are repressed. Some forms of life thrive, other forms of life are repressed. Why is that so? Animal studies looks into it. Animal studies looks into why some forms of life are thriving while others are destroyed. Animal studies is one of the concerns in animal studies is representing animals not only as symbols for human interest but as subjects themselves. Animals become subjects. Animals become subjects. That means what? That means Animal Farm nahi. Animal Farm also. Animals. We look at animals not anthropomorphically represented. Animals presented as animals. How their subjectivity becomes important. We have to talk about them and their problems. Hai na? Animal studies is in the forefront of new epistemological paradigms, means new knowledge systems New epistemological paradigms means new knowledge systems for recognizing and articulating the agency of other animals. But speaking for others is always tricky. You know, animals can't speak for themselves. The animals cannot speak for themselves. We have to speak for them. So it is tricky, because how far can we understand animals properly? Will we be able to speak for them? Like Gayatri Spivak asked, can the subaltern speak? She asked like that. Can the animal speak? In human-centered scholarship, animals are relegated to the background. You know, in animal farm also, animals are relegated to the background. Animals are treated like humans. Human values take over there. Human is the center there, because animals are acting like humans. How far do animals find a representation and voice? Do you understand? How far can they have meaningful lives and relationships? Always we depict animals as having human characteristics. This is very problematic. Animal studies developed out of animal liberation movement, and it is grounded in ethical questions. Animal studies is grounded in ethical questions, such as whether it is moral to eat animals, the ethics of scientific research on animals for human benefit, and so on. Ethics related to eating non-vegetarian food, scientific research, etc. Animal studies, Peter Singer is a very famous theorist. Peter Singer's Animal Liberation is a founding text of animal studies. Peter Singer's Animal Liberation. Singer's work followed Jeremy Bentham's work. Did you know that? Jeremy Bentham wrote about, utilitarian questions about pleasure and pain beyond humans. And Peter Singer's Animal Liberation is based on Jeremy Bentham's ideas. 1990s mark an important moment in the growth of animal studies. The publication of Donna Haraway's Primate Visions, Harriet Rithwow's The Animal Estate, Carol Adams wrote The Sexual Politics of Meat, Donald Griffin wrote Animal Minds. These are all very major areas, books that will give you an idea of animal studies. Animal studies and philosophy are related. Two well-known scholars are Peter Singer and Tom Regan. Singer's Animal Liberation and Regan's The Case for Animal Rights appeared at this time. Today we talk about literary and cultural animalities. In literature also, animality is there. Guys, let me tell you something interesting. What do students of animal studies do? They examine how human beings are related. Humanity and our culture is related to animals, isn't it? That is what we do. How representations of animals throw light upon the human. Now, a very important literary figure in animal studies is J.G. Ballard. J.G. Ballard has written many novels, like 20 novels at least, and many short stories, creating a lot of animals and creatures, strange creatures. So, posthumanism can be applied in J.G. Ballard's work. J.G. Ballard, you know, right? Empire of the Sun. He wrote The Burning World, The Crystal World. Haven't you heard of J.G. Ballard? Always they ask J.G. Ballard in NET exam. J.G. Ballard is a favorite of NET people. Another important literary connection I want to show you is Amitav Ghosh's Hungry Tide. In Amitav Ghosh's Hungry Tide, you know that there is a character called Nirmal. Nirmal is quoting Rainer Maria Rilke's poems. You know that, right? Nirmal, the character, is quoting Rainer Maria Rilke, and some of the quotations border on animals. So like that, there are very subtle animal presence. There is very subtle animal presence in mainstream literature. So you can focus on that and do some research project or research paper. Okay. Now, what is animality studies? These are all different approaches. They are all different. You can talk about anthrozoology, which means psychological and biological understanding of how human beings are attached to animals, pets, etc. Cross-cultural similarities, animal-human relationships, all that comes under anthrozoology. It is an interdisciplinary field. Anthrozoology is an interdisciplinary field. How animals occupy human spaces and culture. That is the meaning of anthrozoology. Did you understand? How animal lives intersect with human lives. Now, what is animality studies? It's a very important area, emerging area. Animal studies thought that animals have rights, animals have animal welfare is important, animal cruelty is wrong. That is the basis of animal studies. But animality studies is not such a narrow discipline. Animality studies is not just based on animal rights or animal welfare, it is more broader than that. Did you understand? Then there is critical animal studies. Critical animal studies is called CAS. Okay, it is again an interdisciplinary field. It's very recent. These emerged in the 21st century only. Theory to activism, starting from animal theory, they move on to activism. And it combines a lot of approaches in humanities and social sciences. Critical animal studies. Then there is human animal studies, or HAS. That is a very important area, interdisciplinary area. Please explore all this. Don't do boring work on already overworked areas. You will not have more opportunities if you work like that. Okay, human animal studies and all are very upcoming areas these days. History, literary criticism, sociology, geography, all these, anthropology, all these are connected. Veterinary medicine, these are all connected in human and animal studies. It's a comparative approach. Comparative psychology, comparative sociology, etc. is there in this area. Then animal industrial complex. Oh my God, have you heard of that? Here we are sitting, we have not even heard of all these new areas in our subject. These are all new areas in our discipline. Did you understand? Animal industrial complex refers to the exploitation, the study of the exploitation of animals. How animals are exploited as food. It refers to studies related to food industry, animal testing, related to medicine, animals in medicine, then animals in labor and transport. So many ways in which animals are exploited. Animals are used in tourism and entertainment industry. Then there is like pet breeding, etc. So many ways in which we use animals. Utilitarianism, that is why Jeremy Bentham is associated. Jeremy Bentham defined utilitarianism in a new way. He did not say we should use animals or exploit animals. And this is all related to post-humanism also. Post-humanism, anti-humanism, different approaches are there. Post-humanism means what lies beyond the human. Of course, animal comes beyond the human. Post-humanist theory is very important. I have given some lectures. It is there in YouTube. Post-humanist theory claims to offer a new approach of knowledge or new branch of knowledge that is not anthropocentric, not centered on man. Did you understand? That is very, very important these days. Looking at the boundaries between human, animal and machine. Post-humanism explores the boundaries between human, animal and machine. Okay? In NET also they will ask which of the following is true pertaining to post-humanism. They can ask. I don't know why people don't understand. They don't watch my video thinking this is not important. We don't need it. Wrong approach. You should not think like that. These are all very new areas which we should know. They will ask in NET also. Major theorist Richard D. Dider, Carrie Wolf, Peter Singer, Thomas Regan, Pauline Bennett. Important books देखो, Animals and Society, an Introduction to Human Animal Studies, Animals and Human Imagination, Critical Animal Studies, Thinking Animals. So many important books you can read if you want. Can you answer this one? This is written by a very major theorist. He has already been asked about in net. Who of the following wrote a book on the question of the animal, the open, man and animal? This famous book, who wrote? Already they have asked a question about him in net. He is associated with the concept of Homo sacer. Actually, it is not a new area. Many people are working on it. That is why I wanted my sweethearts to know about it. My sweethearts in YouTube should know about it, I thought. It is Giorgio Agamben. Homo sacer, the concept is very important. Giorgio Agamben. Peter Singer popularized the term speciesism. Speciesism, describing the exploitative treatment of animals in animal liberation. Who coined the term speciesism? I already mentioned his name. It is Richard D. Dider. Richard D. Dider. Will you remember? When you hear new things, you should never think, this is not important. I don't want to listen to this. I only want to pass net. Don't think like that. In net also, they will ask these things. And also, it is not just enough to pass net. You have to have amazing careers, hai na? You have to be futuristic, hai na? That is why. Which of the following is not a possible area in animal studies? Bolo. The religious significance of animals throughout human history, the symbolism of animals in literature and art, the critical evaluation of animal abuse, the underrepresentation of women as characters in games. Ta-da-da! Will you please share in your groups, guys? Will you share this video in your groups so that more people will know about all these areas? It is underrepresentation of women, of course. Then, Roland Barthes' final lecture series. Acho, I gave the answer here. Acho, I gave the answer. I forgot to move the answer. Roland Barthes' final lecture series, The Animal That Therefore I Am, examined how interactions with animal life affect human attempts. Is it true or false? Answer is false. I gave the answer. I forgot to remove it. It is Jacques Derrida's final lecture series. Jacques Derrida it is. The Animal That Therefore I Am. The Animal That Therefore I Am by Jacques Derrida. Which of the following is a possible area of research in animal studies? Language power and the social construction of animals. Memory and trauma in post-Second World War fiction. Dalit feminism in post-independence poetry. The cultural impact of war movies. Bolo, bolo. Ayyo, it is language power and the social construction of animals. Henna. Did you like today's video, guys? I hope you enjoyed. Guys, we have come to the end of today's session. Thank you very much for joining me. I wish you would share this in your groups. Guys, on 27th of March, we have an amazing program in YouTube Sunday. Please join us. You can meet 100 people who passed in it and we'll be giving them gifts. Okay. So, did you see the giveaway surprise video, guys? Will you take part in giveaway surprise contest? You should like and subscribe. And also comment on every day at 6 videos from today onwards. Will you do that? Every day at 6 videos and then you will get a prize. I have kept aside 25,000 rupees for that. you will get a big surprise from me. Gamification. Shuru. Gamification. We have a game. Giveaway contest. Din, din, din. In everyday at 6, you should comment and take part in our game. Okay? Bye bye. See you tomorrow.